It's the Win It podcast. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. This is Russell Clay at Russell J Clay. Finally, a big Wednesday slate after we've been dealing with some smaller 4 games, some split slates there, but it's a monster night. A lot of great games on tap.
This is a monster slate, and it's going to be fun because there's so many different combinations that I think can work.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of great games. I know real big blowout concerns outside of Cleveland and Brooklyn. Although Charlotte and OKC does have a double-digit spread, but I don't think a blowout. I mean, I think Charlotte's been pretty decent this season to get Batum back for this game, so I think that one should be close.
Yeah, it should be close. I think OKC will keep them at a distance, but I don't see like a 20-point blowout.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see it really impacting the starters' minutes too much in that one.
Right.
But, I mean, looking at point guards tonight, there are some injury concerns. Of course, Jarrett Jack's been out, Goran Dragic out. You have Victor Oladipo, who's been out. So you're going to see some more Tyler Johnson. Donald Sloan's been filling in nicely for Jarrett Jack there, seeing different minutes. But Patrick Beverley's the big one, who's been the newer one. He's questionable tonight. He left the last game. Ty Lawson saw some minutes, but
yeah,
you're not going down that road.
We want to, but yeah.
You're kind of. I mean, now there's talks of them trading him to the Bucks possibly, which is a rumor. But I think you're going to see more Harden shift over. You're going to see more Marcus Thornton at the 2, if anything, especially with the way he caught fire last game against the Clippers.
Yeah, it's just kind of unfortunate how this has gone for Lawson, but like you said, I just think more usage to other players.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing it gives a bump to is Reggie Jackson because he's not going to see Beverley on defense, which is a big bump. Who I think Reggie Jackson's a nice tournament play tonight.
Absolutely. Yep, I'm with you. But as we talked about before the show, point guard is pretty much going to decide the night. All these crazy combinations.
It's loaded. I mean, you really can't go wrong. I mean, you got Curry and Westbrook up top, really pricey. I think they're definitely GPP plays for me. More so Curry than Westbrook tonight, just because. I mean, one, he's a little bit cheaper. One, DK is a little bit cheaper, but there's so many mid-tier guys.
Right. And I think the roster construction angle, if you play Curry, your lineups are probably going to look different. But I think in terms of a contrarian play, I don't think as many people are going to be on him as some of these mid-tier options. So this might be a night that you can hit him, and it might be good odds for you.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, especially because there's a lot of value on this slate. So, like you mentioned, you kind of get Curry. Maybe you can fit one more other big guy in there. Maybe a tier 2 guy like Paul Millsap or something, and then kind of work in the value plays. But moving over, my favorite play tonight at point guard is Ish Smith. I just think points per dollar, he's my favorite play. I mean, against Orlando, they're in the bottom 5 in fantasy points allowed to opposing point guards, and he's just he's been great since coming to Philly.
Right. I think he's pretty clearly, in terms of points per dollar, he's definitely the best value. I kind of like this game in general. Elfrid Payton's an interesting value at 5,800. So I think both of those guys could do well tonight. I kind of like this game for tournaments just in general, but especially those two.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we were talking before the game about that game or before the podcast about that game. And,
it is before the game, though. So
yeah, we're suiting up tonight with Philly and Orlando. But, I mean, a lot of great mid-tier guys at those prices and a decent Vegas total. And, they definitely all have upside for many of those starters in that game. So I'm definitely intrigued with that one.
Yeah. As I mentioned,
just digging deep.
I kind of like D'Angelo Russell tonight just because of the over implied totals and his price. But we were talking before the show, and you said you don't like the ceiling that much, but I think he's an interesting cash play tonight.
Yeah, I mean, because he's so cheap, he's kind of going to flirt with that 25 fantasy point. Kind of hoping maybe he gets into the 30s, but I mean, not a bad matchup against the Kings. I think for that price, if you're paying up for some other options, he's definitely a nice piece to work with.
Right.
But, looking at other guys, I mean, You got Isaiah Thomas, you got Kyle Lowry. Boston's been good against point guards this season, but kind of Lowry does it all. Great defensive player. So even if he's not shooting the ball well, he can still get you points. But I think he's just a GPP play for me in that matchup.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I see him as well, especially like Ish Smith right there. So
yeah, it's really hard to get away from Ish Smith tonight.
Yeah. What's your take on Lowry?
Lowry?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, facing off against that Boston backcourt, it's tough, but I mean, still, tournament play not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at guys, I mean, there's still Rondo who's sitting right there. I think he's going to be your more popular play tonight because he's playing the Lakers. He definitely has upside. I just think it's loaded. You got Kemba Walker, Isaiah Thomas right there. I mean, you really have a platoon of options to really choose from.
Yeah, I do like Rondo just based on how that game stacks up in terms of the rest of the games tonight. But like you mentioned, the ownership percentage might be a little too much for him to actually be a good play anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be a little bit overpopulated with percentage, but I mean, it's definitely a good matchup. But if you're looking to be contrarian, I think fading Rondo could be the way to go because he hasn't shown off with too many of those upside games that we've seen lately. He's been kind of flirting with that 35 to 40 range,
right?
Which is solid, but on a night like tonight, there's plenty of guys who can really surpass that.
Right, especially in tournaments, you're going to need to hit really high upside. So
it's going to be a very high scoring night.
Yeah.
Moving over to shooting guard, like I said, Victor Oladipo's the guy out there, but we talked about Elfrid Payton. Evan Fournier going to be another guy who sees bigger minutes because of that situation. And I mean, he's a guy in a nice spot tonight. And at those price tags, not a bad option. I kind of like that because I like paying down a shooting guard tonight.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are some higher upsides at different positions. So any way you can get value at shooting guard is a nice start. I like KCP tonight versus Houston. He's only 5,800, and he's just been getting such consistent minutes. And I just like him as a nice value play.
Yeah, I mean, he's quietly been averaging 14, 2, and 3 over the last few games. I mean, the guy's a great defensive player. He's averaging 2.2 steals per game in the last 5. So, like you said, I mean, the mints have always been there with him this season, and that's another high-scoring game to look at tonight. It was high-scoring last time. There was a lot of big, high-upside players in that game. So I'm definitely with you with
right. I think it's reasonable to see him in that 35 to 40-point fantasy range tonight. So I really like that value at 5,800.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely has that upside. He's shown that before, and kind of looking in that range still. I like Avery Bradley. He's been seeing bigger minutes, averaging 38 over the last 6 games. Hasn't been shooting the ball entirely well, but as we know, he does other things well. He grabs a few assists, he rebounds, averaging 13, 3, and 4. And he's still kind of at a price range where I don't mind taking shots at him because I know he does have upside, as we saw at the last game against Dallas and the prior game against Phoenix.
Right. And then another sort of mid-range guy is a little more expensive than those guys, but Lou Williams at 6,300 on DK and 5,800 on FanDuel. I think he has some nice tournament upside tonight in that game that obviously we've already been talking about, but it's just high upside in that game.
Yeah, you're definitely – it's hard to get away from that. And there's plenty of guys at, all price ranges to really go after. If you're paying up, it's not James Harden for me. I know we were talking. It's not James Harden for you either. It's Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, you saved that 1,300 right off the bat, and Butler's been on fire lately. So I don't know.
I mean, it's hard to get. I mean, it seems like Houston's offense is kind of focused down on the big guys a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Harden's been a little bit passive for me as far as Butler. I mean, he seems to be the guy, and he's kind of take on more of a playmaker role. I mean, he's averaging 7 assists in the last 5 games, which is impressive for him.
Right. He's had over 6 assists in each of the last 5 games. So that's definitely an interesting thing to keep an eye on,
Yeah. And as far as minutes go, minutes have been the talk of the show, but Jimmy minutes is always going to get his.
Absolutely.
Moving over to small forward, you got your heavy guys, Durant, LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony. If Porzingis sits, Carmelo Anthony's kind of intriguing at 8,300 on DK. It's a tough matchup against Utah, but if he's got to be the guy again where he does it all himself, he can do it.
Well, you pretty much saw the worst case scenario of that the other day. He went 7 for 28, but he still ended up with 40 fantasy points. So it's kind of like, if that does happen, worth a shot, you know, because he's always got that high upside.
Yeah, definitely not a cash game play. You better off paying up for Durant.
Right.
I do think LeBron James' upside is a little bit capped for me right now. He's kind of on my no list for a little bit, just because you got Kevin Love, you got Kyrie Irving there. Blowout concern against Brooklyn. I don't think you're going to see his best game.
It's not like Harden. I think he's had two really tough matchups in the last 3 games, but it just seems like the offense is sputtering a little bit right now, and I don't know. I'm kind of fading him until I see. I don't want to chase points, but I want to see him do it again and sort of get back in that rhythm.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, he did have 2 tough matchups. He saw Kawhi Leonard, which you're not taking anyone against him.
Right.
And also, Golden State's been, they've not shut him down, but it
was just a weird game. Yeah, it was just a weird game.
Yeah, it seemed there was no general interest from the Cavs side in that one. That was odd.
No. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm probably not touching him tonight, especially with who else you can pay up for, you know?
Yeah. Looking else, I mean, Gordon Hayward, still no Derek Favors. He's doubtful tonight. He's kind of taken over a huge role on offense and been really consistent. And obviously he's coming off a monster game, but that was a double overtime game against Charlotte where he went 36-9-5. But I mean, he's been really solid. He went 24-5-4 against New York earlier this season, just in 27 minutes. The Jazz blew him out that game.
Right. Yeah, no. I like a few Jazz players tonight. Gordon Hayward's definitely interesting. He's been doing pretty well. I mean, the Favors being out thing is kind of a big deal in terms of how the offense gets split up. So, yeah, that's definitely a nice bump.
Yeah, because we'll talk about Trey Lyles in a little bit because he's your other guy from the Jazz that you're on. But sticking to small forward, Jay Crowder, definitely been a reliable cash game option. Averaging 17, 2, and 5. And I mean, this guy's great on the defensive end. I mean, he nabs steals. I mean, almost 2 a game. You can kind of count on that for his floor. Not a bad matchup against Toronto, who don't have DeMarre Carroll anymore, so they're kind of lacking a little bit on the wing.
Yeah, and again, he's one of those guys that does more than just score. Yeah. So even if he has a down night shooting, he can still get you that sort of nice little floor. Yeah. I like that value at 6,700 on DraftKings. I like Marcus Morris tonight at 5,700. I think he has a good chance to reach value against Houston. So, and he's 5,200 on FanDuel, so that's even a better value.
Yeah, and he's kind of like your KCP play where, he does have upside. He's got a nice 25 fantasy point floor. A great matchup, and then I mean both of them just have been logging monster minutes this season.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of looking at tournament guys in that mid range. I really like Tobias Harris. We were talking about the Philly Orlando game. It's never consistent with him. It's never easy. It's not fun to play sometimes. But I mean, the guy does have 35 plus fantasy point plus upside, and he has shown it before. But he does have a low floor that you don't like.
He's just an inconsistent player, but that's why he's 6,100. So I think this is a good bet tonight to sort of bet on that upside. It's a good matchup. Everything should set up nicely. So
yeah, he's kind of like this year's Josh Smith.
Right.
Remember when Josh Smith was seeing consistent minutes? He would go off for 40, and then all of a sudden the next game it would be 18.
Or he'd get like 2 fouls in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, come on, Josh. Technical. Yeah.
Looking at cheap guys tonight, there are a few guys down there. Aaron Gordon on DK, a small forward at 4,200. He's been seeing a bit bigger minutes into the 20s and playing well. I mean, he's averaging 9 and 6 over the last 3 games there, coming off an 18 and 7 game. Love the matchup against Philly. And just another one of those small forward Orlando Philly games that we like.
Right. Shabazz Muhammad, he's really cheap on FanDuel, 3,800. He's been sort of getting into that 4 to 5 sort of value. He's been getting 4 to 5 times value every night. So other than that one dud, he's actually been pretty consistent. I don't think he has the ceiling for tournaments, but on FanDuel, I think he's a decent cash play.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get that 20, fantasy point game from him, and obviously that salary is going to leave you with a lot elsewhere. So,
Right.
he's more of a complement piece. I'm definitely with you there. Any other guys you're looking at here at small forward?
No, I think we mentioned the big ones, but yeah, those are pretty much what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant's an interesting sort of pay up option, but if not, I like some of those value plays we mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, he's still below 10K on both sites, which is not usually a place we see Durant. So,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. I think you like Durant, and then you also like paying up for some of those mid-tier guys.
Hmm.
Moving over to power forward, there are some injury concerns. We mentioned Derek Favors, question more doubtful tonight, even though he did travel. Porzingis is the one that's the big one.
That's a big one.
Yeah,
That shifts a lot of things. I kind of like him if he plays, but I mean, it's more about the peripheral pieces that it affects if he doesn't.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of going to be interesting to see how they line up because we have seen Derek Williams step up at the 4 sometimes, but they also do have Kyle O'Quinn. It's probably not a situation I'm going to be attacking much of anyway, just because the Jazz they're a slow-paced team and they have one of the better defenses in the league. So I think Porzingis' skill level is obviously going to top that, but you're getting into those lower tier options. There's just not a lot to look at.
Right.
The other injury news: Larry Nance Jr. Doubtful tonight. Him and Brandon Bass. That means they're going to have to play Julius Randle. Sorry, they're actually forced to. He played 26 minutes last game and went 12 and 11. I think he's one of your better value options at power forward, along with Trey Lyles.
Definitely. And in this type of game, I'd say he's a really good bet to get that double-double bonus. So
yeah.
at 5,400, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's probably one of my favorite value ones, but like you said, you were talking about Trey Lyles. You like Trey Lyles.
Yeah, he's been awesome the last 3 games, and I think that should continue, especially if Porzingis is out. There's just not a lot for New York there to sort of keep him out of the middle.
Yeah, he's averaging 10 and 7 over the last 6 games, and he's shooting 53% from the field, so he's definitely a nice option. Moving up top, if you're on DK, you got DeMarcus Cousins. Obviously, continue to talk about that Sacramento LA game. Big total, big upside for a lot of those players. It's hard to get away from Boogie.
Yeah, I just think of all the highest priced players, I see him as having the highest upside tonight. So I think it's not likely that he gets 60 plus points tonight, but I think it's a pretty decent bet.
Yeah, no, I would definitely take that bet. I mean, Cousins has just been phenomenal. He's averaging 30 and 13 over the last 4 games. Took it easy on the Clippers, I guess you could say. But, I mean, he saw a game against Utah, tough front court, went 36 and 17, 32 and 12. I mean, he's just been really consistent lately, which was his problem earlier in the year. But he seems to have figured it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Other top options, Draymond Green's the guy. I've not seen a lot of buzz around tonight, and I think not because it's a tough matchup, but that price tag's up there now.
It's high. And in terms of the type of player he is, he can have those nights where he just has 4 blocks, 3 steals, 10 rebounds.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I like it as much tonight. So.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think, you're going to see a Curry show, I believe, tonight. It is an ESPN game, and I'm kind of throwing that narrative out there where you're going to get a show. Like, it's going to be a fun game where they just go off for 100 plus points, and Curry's out there shooting from downtown. Like, I just
from half court. Yeah,
it happened last game, so I think Draymond Green's he's probably in that 40-point fantasy point range, but I can't pay up for that price tag tonight.
Well, what do you think his ownership percentage is? Because if it's low, it might be a good contrarian play off of Curry.
Yeah. I mean, definitely if you're going to grab some if you want Warriors exposure, I think Green's still going to be. I think GPPs. I think it's going to be 10 to 20% still.
Yeah,
leaning more towards the middle, about 15%.
So it's kind of tough with everyone else on this slate to fit him in tonight.
Yeah, I just think now that he's got that price tier bump, it's hard when you're comparing to guys like Cousins, Durant.
Right.
all those point guards. But my favorite power forward, Paul Millsap tonight, gets a Portland defense that struggled against power forwards of late. I mean, Millsap's just been quietly good, and no one really talks about his upside, but his upside is there, just because his defensive game. But I mean, he's averaging 19, 4, and 8 with 3 blocks or 2 blocks and a steal over the last 4 games, and he's just playing 28 minutes a game.
Right. And I'm not saying him and Draymond are equal, but I think tonight it's sort of they're more equal than usual.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like for that extra 1,200 on DraftKings. I don't think it's that big of a difference, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think Millsap actually carries a little bit more upside tonight. I think the floor is pretty similar, but I do think Millsap in that matchup, kind of being a more focal point in that offense as well, can do it, especially against Portland, who's a better matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on down the list, you got Kevin Love out there in that mid-tier range, Chris Bosh, but I think just because Trey Lyles and Julius Randle are cheaper, you just kind of want to skip that mid-range and go down.
I think you're either paying up for Cousins or Millsap, or you're dropping down. I just don't see the upside in Bosh or Love tonight.
Yeah. I mean, Dirk missed shoot around this morning. Of course, whenever Dallas plays a heavy stretch of games, you got to always kind of worry about that. If Dirk was to sit out tonight, you would see some Dwight Powell, who would be a really nice kind of a punt play at price guy, but he does see bigger minutes when Dirk sits. So not a bad option there.
Yeah, no, that could definitely work out. And I mean, he's so cheap, 3,800. So that'd be an interesting play if Dirk does sit out.
Yeah, because I mean, with all the stars on the slate, that kind of helps your stars and scrubs line up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
But I mean, you like Nerlens Noel. At that price, he's been really consistent of late. He's averaging just 9 and 8, but his defensive game is just phenomenal. 3.2 blocks over the last 5 games on average, also adding in 2 steals per game. You can kind of count on that in another soft matchup against Orlando.
Yeah, he's had at least 1 block in 9 straight games, so that you can pretty much plug that in for his value. So yeah, no, at 6,700, he's a pretty decent shot. And again, that game, you want to just sprinkle some of these guys into some of your lineups, you know?
Yeah. All right, here we go. Back to the Houston-Detroit game. He's been playing well. Ersan Ilyasova. Nice matchup against Houston. They've been awful against power forwards. He's averaging 14 and 9 over the last 5 games, and that's 32 DK points a game. It's not a bad price, and he does have some nice upside for turns, but I can't trust him in cash games, but he's been pretty good lately.
I mean, this is just his career in a nutshell. It's either he's just dominating and he's reaching value every night, and then it's just randomly like he'll just run into the tunnel one night and just be gone.
41, 28, 34 the last 3 games against Chicago, Golden State, and Memphis, so 3 decent opponents.
He's a good player, you know?
Maybe now's the time for the letdown. Maybe I should just point out he's had a good stretch, but now it's time for the letdown. But I do like him tonight against Houston.
No, I do like him. I mean, especially at that price. So he's a good matchup. But I don't know. Yeah. He's Ersan.
Yeah. Just remember, he's Ersan. Moving over to center. You're looking at some guys that are out tonight. Joakim Noah, he's going to be out for the rest of the season, which just means you're going to see more Taj and Pau Gasol minutes down low. But other than that, it's pretty clean tonight, and there's a lot of options. You got Drummond against Houston. He went off for a big game last time. Of course, Pau Gasol's in play. Dwight Howard. You've been on the Hassan Whiteside. You nailed him yesterday. I was a Karl-Anthony Towns guy. I mean, both did well, but
yeah,
Whiteside was just
he's streaking. He's streaking right now. And he didn't go up in price from last night. So yeah, I think he's a pretty safe bet. If you're not paying up for that Drummond tournament upside, I really like Whiteside tonight again.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. I mean, the Wizards have struggled recently against center. They rank in the bottom 10 over the last 10 games in fantasy points allowed to opposing centers. So, obviously Gortat, not a great defender, but he's not a big body down low to where Whiteside can just overhandle him.
Right.
But
what do you think about Carl Anthony Towns tonight?
I'm a little worried.
Yeah,
Just because I mean Dallas has been
really
decent
good.
against centers this season, and as much as Zaza's he's a good player, and you kind of do want to pick on him, but you haven't really been able to this year.
Right.
But it's tough at that price. I think a tournament play because Towns does still have upside, but the price makes it tempting. I rather pay down for actually Zaza or Jonas Valanciunas if I'm going lower.
Right. And the other side of Trey Lyles is Rudy Gobert. What do you think about him in tournaments tonight?
Yeah, with no favors, I mean, he's kind of bounced back over the last, like he's shown big time upside.
Hmm.
Because he had that stretch there where it was Sacramento and Portland, and I mean, he only scored 2 and 3 real points, but now he scored 14 and 18 the last two, and against Charlotte, LA, decent matchups. I don't mind it tonight. I think it's a great. I mean, 6,400, you can't get away from that on DK. That's a great price for him.
Yeah, and I think the rebounding and block upside somewhat averages out the sort of volatile scoring. Not completely. You want him to get that 10 points, obviously, but even if he doesn't, I think he can sort of still reach value tonight.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. I mean, he's a cheaper Whiteside, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Although if Whiteside's going to put up 23, real points, I'll take that
Yeah,
statement
yeah.
back. But I mean, I think they're similar players. And I think for
Agreed.
1,100 less, it's a nice drop down.
Right. They win in similar ways.
Yeah. I like Nikola Vucevic tonight. Not a bad matchup against Philly's been coming around lately, averaging 16 and 10 over the last 3 games. Philly has a defended center as well all season long. Still with a nice price range, I think, because Whiteside is really right in that area. Vuce is going to be the lower owned guy.
I have to agree. I think Whiteside's going to be really high owned tonight compared to like the last few nights. So that's a nice little hedge off him at 7,300 with decent upside.
Because, I mean, as you were mentioning Whiteside streaking right now, but he does have those games where maybe he only sees 25 minutes because the matchup doesn't work out for him. And
right.
Or, he's not getting those blocks, which is rare, but it does happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I definitely like that idea. Hit up that Philly Orlando game tonight.
Yeah, it's surprisingly interesting with all those value plays in there, so I'm definitely on board there. That's going to wrap it up here. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all your tools and analysis, and we will be back on Friday.